Wednesday, so I'm saying. So is today Wednesday? Yes, it's Wednesday. Happy Hump Day.
Hump Day.
It is so good to be here. We were going to do this a little different. Did it come up? I was going to do this for Bill. Did
you know
it
what?
show up?
There we are.
There you are.
Yes, it's Wednesday. It is so good to be here. We were going to do this a little different.
Now you just got to take that down. See, now this is how you know it's live TV. So now share that. So it should be right above that. Nope, not that. Scroll down. Right. Oh, there you are. Scroll down. Right there.
Here?
There it is. Now share that. See, we're sharing. Sharing is caring.
We're good.
Now it is. Oh, what are you sharing?
I don't know.
What are you sharing? You're sharing Brian Tracy. Scroll up. You know what? We'll share it when it's over. How's that?
We'll figure it out later.
We'll share it when it's over. How's that, Bill?
I'll share Brian Tracy for now.
Hey, you're in good company. Hey, happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day. We are wrapping up 2020, and I don't know about you, but can we all just collectively say goodbye?
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Go ahead and put up Bill's banner so we know who he is. I'm being joined today by Bill the Man Schuffenhauer, and I wanted this big fancy intro, but I just kind of wanted you to tell more about your story. So let's just kind of, as a prelude, say 3-time Olympian.
Yeah.
Silver medalist in the 2002 Winter Olympic Games that were right here in Salt Lake City.
Yes.
That is epic. But you've gone through some adversity in your life. So we want to talk about that. So I want to talk about specifically how you overcame some real challenges. You've got a story that a lot of people don't know about.
True.
I'd like to talk about that story. But you're also a speaker, a trainer, a global mentor. So I want to find out what you're doing for organizations too.
Okay.
So we've got a lot in store today. So that's a lot of things to talk about. But let's start with, life is not what is dealt to you. It's how you play the hand. Life is not what happens to you. It's how you react and you respond. Epictetus once said that circumstances do not make the man, but it reveals him to himself. And so it's really when we're in the hot boiling water that we decide and determine who we really are. And the reason I wanted to have Bill on today, as we say adios to 2020 and hello to 2021, I just want to hope that 2020 is the end of all of our troubles, not the beginning.
Yeah.
Because this would be crazy.
It would be crazy. Yes. Yeah.
So you actually have gone through a lot of adversity. So where do you want to start? You're a Utah boy.
Yep.
Grew up right here on the streets of Salt Lake City.
Literally.
Literally. So let's go there. And then, how did you get into the Olympics? And then, when I heard you were Olympian, I thought, and then I saw the picture. I'm like, Bill was a power lifter. No, he was a bobsled guy. And
with a lot of power.
A 4-man bobsled team.
4-man and 2-man.
How in the world do you put 4 men your size in that little tube?
Very carefully.
Well, we'll talk more about that. That's coming up. So take us back on the streets of Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You hit the nail on the head. I was a kid who was born to a mom and a stepfather who was extremely addicted to drugs, lived that typical street life. Anybody out there that has anything to do with, the families that deal in homelessness or drug addicted families that are out there. Again, that was my prototypical family, just on and off the streets, in and out of 17 different foster homes, involved with drugs and gangs at a young age.
When did you go into foster care?
Oh, good grief. Since as far back as I can remember.
Really?
And, and a lot of people always ask that too, because, one of the really weird things that I used to do, and I joke about it now, obviously, is my family home evening was much different than everyone else's, where my family home evening was us getting together and drinking and doing drugs as a family. Very opposite of what
you were
most
together.
people do. We were together. Right? But because of that lifestyle, when the state caught on to some of those things that were going on within our house, or if, my mom went to jail or something happened, I'd get taken away by the state and then go into foster care. So over the years.
Would you go back? So you were in and out of foster care?
In and out of 17 different foster homes growing up. So just a handful of them off and on. And so just a vicious up and down cycle of life that I was exposed to throughout my whole life. And so when you talk about overcoming obstacles in my life, that's my life in a nutshell. A bunch of obstacles and a lot of learning lessons throughout my career.
Where did you go to high school?
Eventually,
Man, that's a big word, I guess. Eventually.
Eventually.
That might be an episode all by itself, eventually.
Right.
But eventually then.
Yeah, eventually I ended up going to Roy High up north.
Oh,
in
really?
Roy, Utah. So it was one of the times I was down here in Salt Lake City. Things were going normal, back and forth with my mom. My mom had gotten in trouble. The state gave my mom as well as my grandma an option. Either I go to my 18th foster home or my grandma had an opportunity to take me in. And so they chose for me to go with my grandma, and my grandma lived up in Roy, Utah at the time. And so made the big old travel up north.
Wow, not a lot of great things come out of Roy.
I know.
I'm sorry if you're in Roy right now and you're hating and commenting. I'm sorry, but we all know the best thing to come out of Roy, Utah, is I-15. But you made it.
Go Royals.
Roy, is that the Roy Royals?
Roy High Royals. Yeah.
So were you active in sports in high school?
Yeah. So I eventually I moved up there in 7th grade, and one of the key things that I happened to me is I got involved with sports my 8th grade year, because my 7th grade year I was too young, but I got kicked off my 8th grade year for mouthing off to the coach. Eventually made it my 9th grade year and got involved with track and field. And so that was
not football.
Not football at first. I didn't know anything about sports. Track and field was the first thing I was exposed to. And again, jokingly, I say I was good at running from cops and jumping fences, so track and field was a natural fit for me.
So hurdling, sprinting and hurdling.
Throwing things,
Wow. There you go. That's great training. So sprinting, hurdling, and throwing things.
Yeah. And then eventually got involved with decathlon and then also football up in high school. So I did both track and field and football.
Very good. What position did you play in football?
Tailback and defensive end and special teams.
Very cool.
So, and defensive end only because I was stronger than the bigger guys and faster than all of them, so I was able to get speed around them and get to the quarterback quicker.
So all the running from cops did pay off.
Did pay off, absolutely.
But you don't. Now we're joking a little bit because we're real and we like to be authentic on the program. Looking back though, that was tough. That was a tough road to hoe as a kid.
It was a really tough road, and as a mentor and a coach, I'm really big on helping people reflect on their past so they could truly understand and appreciate where they are today. And same goes for me. I reflect a lot on my past and all those learning lessons that help me either, find new success today or find another path to go in order to get to where I want to go. But if you ignore those things that helped you get to where you were, then you're kind of missing out on the whole show. So although a hard road, a lot of hard lessons learned, but also helped me to be in the position I am today.
Do you have some gratitude for those moments, as hard as it was, in and
absolutely.
out of foster care and just the rough childhood? What have you gleaned that you say, I'm actually grateful for X in those situations? What did you learn?
A whole plethora of things. I'm very, very big at turning negative situations into positives. Even not that we want to jump forward to the whole 2020, 21, but, for me, I look at 2020 as a learning lesson and something to prepare me for what might be coming for 2021.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that the more we approach life that way, the better off we're going to be prepared. So, living the street life, doing the drugs, getting in trouble, seeing the chaos that my mom was going through and all that stuff, they were weird learning lessons that I had to somehow mold and manipulate to work for me, in just overall mental strength, right? It took a lot of mental strength to deal with that stuff and overcome that stuff. So anytime I run into something that's difficult in life now today, I remind myself, this is really not that difficult because what you went through in the past is so much more difficult than what you're dealing with now. So just figure it out and move forward.
Also, those tough life lessons as a child prepared you to go through some great victories. But once you achieve those victories, and I don't want to skip ahead too far, or however you want to do this, linear, or we can jump around. I took my ADHD meds today, so we could do this if we need to.
And I had my energy drink, so we're good.
We do. Oh, yeah, you did. He downed a few. I see a theme. John Absey was here a few weeks ago, and he brought energy drinks. I'm thinking I better start drinking energy drinks to look like these guys. But you had achieved some great successes, but that doesn't mean that sets you up for life that you're never going to go through adversity again. It's cyclical, isn't it?
It is.
Life
Absolutely.
is cyclical.
Yeah.
So take us after high school. How did you ever get into bobsledding, and bridge that gap from your high school years to your early adult years and how you prepared to be an Olympian.
Yeah. So throughout high school, when I got involved with the decathlon, that was going to be my main sport. And everybody was like, well, from day one, I did really well at it. My focus, my determination, my hard work, just really worked well into the sport of decathlon, which is 10 events over 2 days in track and field. And so throughout college, I did decathlon.
Where'd you go to college?
Weber State University.
Oh, very good.
Go Wildcats.
There you go.
Yeah.
You stayed up north.
I did. Yeah.
You like it up there.
It's interesting because I had an opportunity to go anywhere in the world.
Really?
Because of, when I graduated Roy High School, I was given the Gatorade National Athlete of the Year award. So best athlete in all sports across the United States.
Wow.
And I chose to stay home, but it played off really well for what I wanted to do and the journey I was about to go on. So went from there to Weber State and had a great career there with some great coaches.
Decathlon
Yeah,
was your
decathlon. And was there for the years I spent at Weber State. Eventually, after I left Weber State in 1995, in my head, I was like, I got to surround myself with the very best athletes and coaches in the world. And so back then, we didn't have the technology we do now. So I wrote a letter to Dan O'Brien, at the time, currently #1 in the world in decathlon, and his coach, Mike Keller. And so wrote a hand letter, licked the envelope, put it in the mail. When's the last time you did that?
a lot of faith. I don't know.
Right?
I don't remember the last time I mailed something.
But I put it in the mail and just waited, and eventually got a letter back from Dan O'Brien and Mike Keller. Said, hey,
How did we do it back then?
Oh, I don't know.
We had a lot more faith back then.
Absolutely.
You licked a stamp, you put it in the mail, you had faith it was going to be delivered, you had faith in the person
I
in reply.
manifested that it was going to happen.
And it did.
And it did. And so from there, I jumped on a Greyhound bus from Ogden, Utah to Moscow, Idaho.
I'm glad you qualified that because I'm like,
right?
A bus to Moscow.
I've had people always, you went to Moscow? No, Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. So I took the bus up there and had an opportunity to train with some of the very best athletes and coaches in the world.
Wow.
That eventually, I ended up wanting to come back home and train with my coaches here right before the 2000 Sydney Games. Things were going really, really well. Did my first decathlon of the year, getting ready for the Olympics at Utah State. Scored over 8,000 points. Was the 51st.
What is
American.
good? I'm not proficient in decathlon.
Anything over 8,000 points is really, really good. So I was the 51st American in history to score over 8,000 points.
Wow.
And so that qualified me for Olympic trials already. At the time, gave me a #1 world ranking. And so things were going really, really well. And we just continued to prep the same way. And so throughout the year, eventually got towards the end of the season, did another decathlon, scored even more points, still ranked top 5 in the world. Wow. And that was, everyone's like, it's finally going to happen. He's going to go to the Olympics. Finally, the story of this kid who grew up the way he did, now he's going to go to Sydney, Australia and go to the Olympics. And, we went down to BYU just to do a tune-up meet prior to Olympic trials, about 2 weeks prior to Olympic trials, and I blew my ankle out on the long jump board.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I can't really put into words what I felt because it was bad enough I couldn't walk on my ankle. I knew my Olympic pursuit was done. And just devastated. I mean, I remember.
Tell us about the devastation.
I just remember it came more. The reality came more because I injured it in the long jump, and then I still had the high jump. So long jump, then I had the shot put, then I still had to go do the high jump right after that. So we pushed through the shot put, got ready for the high jump, and you're jumping off the same leg you injured, right? And mine's taped up. We shot it up with numbing agents, everything we could. But the injury was so bad that I just remember blowing through the bar. You get 3 attempts, right? Blew right through the bar 3 times. And the third one, I just remember laying on the mats. I could feel the bar. I knocked it off and I landed on it and just laying there looking up at the sky in tears.
Our producer's saying, move this a little bit. Yeah.
Move me?
Yeah, slide over a little bit.
How's that?
See, that's how you know it's live TV.
Right? And so I just remember laying on the mats on the high jump pit, and just the only thought went through my head is like, it's over. It's done. And all those years of having the thoughts and dreams and goals of changing my stars and going from this kid who was never supposed to amount to nothing to possibly the Olympics just all came crashing down. And of course the tears come down and the realization that it was over. And, I get up off the pads and my coach is like, what do you want to do? And I just told him it's over with. And I grabbed my bag and literally walked off the track and left. And that was it for, my Olympics and getting ready for the Sydney Olympics in 2000. And,
Can't imagine, because the Olympics comes down to like moments.
Absolutely.
Now, the decathlon's 10 events, so you'd have 10 moments, so to speak. But I can't imagine you train your whole life to come down to performing in the Olympics, and you may lose by 0.2 of 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
So your whole life to that point comes down to, even if you took second, you're the loser by 0.2 of a second.
Mm-hmm.
And that dream was shattered in an instant for you.
Yeah. And it wasn't,
because that was what your life was going to be all about.
Yeah. And it didn't matter where I finished in that competition. It was the injury that took me out of getting ready for the Olympic trials 2 weeks later.
But you had your heart on the Olympics in Sydney.
Yeah. World ranking and everything. And
gone,
done, down the drain. And
so what was the next day like afterwards?
Honestly, it was the next few months was a bit of a chaos. I fell into a pretty bad depression. And literally just kind of lost it. Anybody out there who deals with depression,
lost it.
I just gave up. I gave up on myself, lost hope in all my goals and dreams, because again, I put being an Olympian on such a pedestal that I didn't know anything else. And that's what defined myself as well. Right. And so when that was gone, I didn't know what to do. And my focus was so much on becoming an Olympian that I didn't know what else was going to come next. And so the thought of even doing anything else wasn't even playing in my mind. It was just like, what do I do now? Like, it's over with and done. And so the next few months again was just chaos. Felt like I was just aimlessly going through life, completely aimlessly, no hope whatsoever. And then, the world works funny ways, and I'm a true believer that, we all have some type of guardian angel out there, and they throw us signs every now and then, but it's our choice to pick them up and do something with them. And somebody who knew somebody else came to me and said, hey, what do you think about the Olympics here in Salt Lake City? I was like, what are you talking about?
You're like, it's the wrong time of the year.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, the Olympics are in
summer boy.
Sydney. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, no, the Winter Olympics. I'm like, I had no idea that there were even Winter Olympics.
Really?
Which, weird, right? Like, I grew up in Utah. I should know that we're having the Olympics in our home state. But I had no clue. And they said, no, a lot of guys, that are track and field and football guys go into this sport called bobsled. And
really?
I was like, okay, well, what is that? Because I don't ski. I don't figure skate. I don't do any of those things.
I would love to see you figure skate.
Like Blades of Glory, hold another guy up and spin around. And, they introduced me.
Who is they?
Just some people who knew some bobsled drivers,
really?
friends of friends. Funny enough, I did a podcast with one of the original Jamaican bobsled guys last week, and we talked about this.
Really?
And I had to let him know.
Cool
I was introduced to bobsled via Cool Runnings.
Really?
Legitimately,
you watched the movie and said, that's what it is.
I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then, of course, they showed me some videos of the team competing over in St. Moritz, Switzerland. And then I was like, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. But we only had a year and 3 months. And the reality of moving into another sport with a year and 3 months before the big show, chances are really, really slim.
How do you get on a bobsled team?
Oh, good grief. You go to Sears. No, joking. It was just one of those things. Somebody knew a guy who was a bobsled driver, and they called him and said, hey, we have this guy who's a great athlete. He was just getting ready to train for the Sydney Olympics, and I know you're looking for push athletes. And from there on out, they came out. They were already here in Park City because they were preparing for the 2002 Winter Olympics. So they were already out here. And I just went up there, introduced myself, met the guys, kind of had a chance to see what they did. They came to Ogden to watch one of my track and field practices, and they're like, yeah, we need to have this guy try out. And so for 3 months, I drove up to Park City back and forth every day, just kind of watching. I didn't push the sled. I just kind of from a student of the sport, just watched what they did day in and day out. And eventually they said, hey, would you come up to Park City one day? And yeah, sure, why not? And you know, and part of that whole conversation back before we even got introduced was like, how cool would that be if we could actually turn this story that you grew up here in Salt Lake City and eventually turned your life around to go to the Olympics in Salt Lake City?
Wow.
And we're like, you couldn't write a better story than that. And what if it worked out, right?
Yeah.
And we had nothing to lose, so we just kind of went for it. And so I ended up driving up there with the expectation I was just going to help and carry bags and work on the sled like normal. They're like, no, we want you to actually push today. So that was my first time learning how to push a 4-man sled. And
there's obviously the driver.
There's a driver.
But then you have 3 other, but you're all pushing until you get in, correct?
Yeah, we all push until we get in. Yeah.
And then to me, that's the art.
Yeah.
How you all get in so quick
is very, very key.
I mean, that's where it's won, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is in the push.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us about what that was like.
So they're like, okay, we're going to have you go down into 4-man today with, 2 other guys. And I was like, okay. And, at that point in time, I'm like, oh my gosh, kind of panic mode, right? Like you're actually going to push the sled going down the track. And, I just thought to myself before we went down, just stick to the basics and do what watch, you've been watching for a long time, just follow through and don't try to do anything crazy or out of control, and end up going down. And we do our 4 runs, and, the guys and the driver like super excited. And I'm like, why are you guys so excited? And they're like, oh, that's the best we've ever done ever. And I was like, wow. And so they said, and not only that, you just pushed in a Team World Cup trial race. And I was like, what?
You didn't know that?
No, I had no clue. So my first time ever pushing a bobsled was here in Salt Lake City during the World Cup team trial race.
Wow.
In a 4-man bobsled.
And you obviously qualified
did
then.
really well. Yeah. Yeah.
And is that what qualified the team for the Olympics?
No. So that team I was with was at the time was kind of USA 5 or 6. And then I went with them to do America's Cup in Canada. We did America's Cup here in Salt Lake. We did America's Cup in Lake Placid, New York. And then we did the Europa Cup. So I was with that team basically the entire year and 2 months prior to the Olympics. And I was just focusing on doing what I was supposed to be doing and trying to be better at the sport and learn how to be a better push athlete. And 2 weeks before Olympic trials, I get a phone call from Team USA 1, Todd Hayes, who was the driver of Team USA 1, and said, hey, we've been watching you and you seem like a really great athlete. Because we're USA 1 and we're ranked number 1 in the world, we have basically what we would consider a Willy Wonka ticket as a team alternate. And we want to know if you'd be interested in being part of our team. And I was like, I'm so dedicated and committed to my team, right? So let me talk to my teammates and I'll get back to you. And he kind of gave me the look like, what are you talking about? Like,
I'm calling you up, buddy.
I just offered you like
to the dance.
Starting, first team starting. And I said, okay, yeah, let me talk to my team. And so luckily, I did go and talk to my team, and it was interesting the response. All my teammates, I thought they were going to be like, oh no, we can do this. And it was completely opposite. They're all like, you know what, this is your time. And we all know your story and this is your opportunity. And they gave me their blessings to go to join Team 1. And so I called up Todd the next day, and a bunch of us were crying, like, not that grown men cry, but we were all crying. And
I break that rule every day. I'm not afraid to.
Right. And so I called up Todd and said, hey, I'd like to take that Willy Wonka ticket. And so that kind of locked my pass on to making the Olympic team as an alternate at the time.
Which puts you in 5th position then, right?
So
there's 4 team members, and then you're 5th as an alternate.
But I'm on USA 1, the number 1 ranked team in the world. So
but at that time, that doesn't mean that's the Olympic team then.
No. So they were, because they were ranked number 1, they had an automatic bid. So they were already on the Olympic team.
Gotcha.
So that was the Golden Willy Wonka ticket, was to be on the Olympic team as an alternate.
And you had to think about it.
I had to think about it. Yeah.
No, it shows loyalty to your team though.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it really does.
And so, it was exciting. All the media got a hold of it. And again, looking back, we were like, wow, this is actually working out. We had no expectations of competing. We were just happy to be an alternate. And we went on tour over to Europe, and I played an alternate to the T. I got the bags and I worked on the sled, and slave labor is basically what I was doing, and making sure my teammates were taken care of and they had everything they needed. And when we came back right before the Olympics here in Salt Lake City, we went out to San Diego Olympic Training Center just to kind of warm up and get in the sun. And we had some race offs and different things like that, just to kind of test everybody's ability and their running speed and strength. And I did well enough that the coaches were like, "Hey, we want to test you and put you in the hot seat in the 4-man bobsled." And so I won my way to actually compete and be on the team. And
wow.
so the story goes, go on to win the first Olympic medal for the U.S. in over 46 years and happened to be silver.
So bring us to Salt Lake City, 2002, because the country was going through an interesting time. 9/11 had just happened in September of 2001. Mm-hmm. It's now 2002. There's a lot of just angst around, hey, how do we pull off the Olympics here in the United States post 9/11? I still get chills when I think about those people carrying in the flag from the World Trade Center into the opening ceremonies and just the feeling about being an American during the Olympics. Take us to that.
One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that, I mean, I was gone on my honeymoon at the time, so I actually had to get called back from being on my honeymoon. And prior to the Olympics, President Bush pulled the whole U.S. team together and said, "Hey, we're really considering canceling the Olympics because of the high threat of security and the terrorist threat." And but they respectfully said, "Hey, we want to ask the athletes, like, what do you think?" And, for us, it was a no-brainer. We were like, this is what the Olympics are all about. The 5 colors in the Olympic rings represent at least one color of every flag in the world. And it's our opportunity as Olympians to try and bring the world back together during chaotic time. And so a lot of people don't realize they were like that close to like saying, "Hey, we're not going to do
Yeah,
the
they
Olympics."
were that close, weren't they? Yeah. I mean, it was razor thin edge of, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And they were nervous until the closing ceremonies ended.
Yeah.
That something was going to happen to jeopardize the whole thing.
Yeah. And, the athletes, we said, "Hey, we trust in our service providers and a military that'll keep everyone safe. And we're going to continue to push on and compete like, we would normally and just do our part again to bring the world together." And the security, as you know, was very, very high.
Amazing.
I remember one day just warming up at the bobsled track up in Park City, and I'd been there jogging and doing things for 45 minutes, and all of a sudden this guy, full white camouflage, big military gun, walks out and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I look at him like, "Where did you come from?" He's like, "I've been standing here the whole time." I'm like, "No way." He'd been watching me for 45 minutes, had no idea who was there.
He just blended in his camo.
Blended in. And there was this guys all over the mountain. Just, the security was very, very high, and they did such a great job and just made everybody feel safe. So, we had we did what we did, and we competed as athletes and brought home more medals than any other country.
Tell us about that experience of the opening ceremonies at Rice Eccles.
Man. Super
for
intense.
us that had to watch it on TV. You were there walking on the track. Well, it wasn't a track, but
it was. So we marched from the basketball arena at the University of Utah to the football stadium, and the whole time it was so intense because we're marching over a mile with all the other countries, and you could hear the stadium, you could feel the energy, and I just took it all in. And I reflected back on where my life and my journey started, right? As a kid who grew up on the streets here. And I remember, if you remember, they had the Olympic rings up there on the mountain.
Yes.
And I looked up at the mountain, I looked at the Olympic rings, and I was like, man, just take it in. And, tears of happiness and joy and all that kind of, not bawling, but they're just, kind of coming out. And
mixed emotions, right? Because it wasn't just, it was joy, but you were reflecting. I can't imagine the emotion of looking at the rings on the mountain.
Looking at the rings on the mountain, and then I could see downtown Salt Lake City where I used to run the streets and panhandle for money and break dance, and just realizing that I made it. That decision that we made a year and 3 months earlier to just go for it. Why not? You have nothing to lose.
Why not you?
Why not me? Why can't it be me? And just taking that all in and realizing that we made it happen.
So you walk through the portal at Rice Eccles. Tell me about that.
Man. It literally just brings tears to my eyes because not only did we make it, but you had an opportunity to do it in your own hometown with your family there in front of billions of people watching worldwide. And, you know that everyone's watching everything that's going on, but I was just like in my head for a moment, I was like, you know what? All billion people are like watching me right now and walking in and having the opportunity to walk in with your teammates. And as you said, having them, bring in the flag from 9/11, just an amazing moment. I don't know how you can get more epic than walking into those opening ceremonies. And then, as we're getting ready to walk in, excuse me, you hear the announcer talking about Team USA, and the energy just continues to build and build. And then as soon as we walk out and the stadium knows, it just explodes with overwhelming energy. And you're just looking in just absolute awe of just this massive stage globally, and you're a part of it. Just amazing.
So you just basked in that experience.
Goodness.
Now fast forward us to the hill.
Yeah.
Because bobsled is at what point during the 21 days of the Olympics?
Towards the end.
Towards the end.
Yeah.
So you're enjoying the Olympics as a spectator too?
I'm
or what? How does that work?
I didn't do a whole lot of anything because I didn't want to jeopardize any of my chances. I went out once with a teammate to walk downtown and realized that probably won't do that again because we got caught up signing autographs and all that fun stuff, which was fun.
You're wearing your Team USA gear.
You're wearing your Team USA gear. So I didn't do a whole lot. I watched everything. I stayed in my dorm. I was married at the time, but I stayed at the Olympic Village because I wanted to get the full experience with my teammates and support them. And it was just neat, just supporting your teammates. And then it's like the countdown, right? You see Shannon Barkey, who was one of the first one to win a medal for the U.S. In mogul skiing, and that launched everything. And so when it was our turn, it was just like clockwork. You just go out there and do what you did. Do the things that got you there, and don't do anything different. And we've had our meetings and we've did our workouts and we've worked on the sled and we just perfected everything and made it as good as could possibly be. And then we just went out there and executed. And day one, and of course we're ranked 1, 2, with Germany. It depends on who's asking. And after the first day, we're in first place.
Because Schuffenhauer is German, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you're going up against the homeland.
That's
amazing.
And so, after the first day, we're in first place. And I remember we all go back and everyone's excited and you just start like, wow, like this is really happening. Like we are in a position to actually win a gold medal or a medal, even at that. Right. And the next day we come out, it's snowing. The setup for the bobsled we had was all meant to be, really cold and sunny. We didn't have a setup for snow. A lot of people don't realize that. Like it's just like NASCAR or any other racing. Your setup is specific to that day's weather, and we didn't have a setup for snow. But the runners were the blades that most people think. We had they're called psychos that run pretty well in most weather. But snow can change a lot, and it did for us. And so that first run of the second day, which is the third run, we go down. We thought we had a great run, and we get back up and had all actually fallen out of medal contention.
Wow.
And I remember we come across the finish line, and was like, what just happened? Like
it just slipped through your fingers.
Yeah,
huh?
Because normally you can tell if you have a bad run or something really went wrong, and you could just feel the energy just sucked out of the air in the crowd, in the team, and everything. And myself and my three teammates, we all get together and we're like, oh man, what just happened? And we just got together and Todd Hayes, our driver, who's the leader of the team, said, hey guys, not sure what happened. That kind of took us out of medal contention. But we've done everything we can to be here at this point in time. We are one of the best teams in the world, and we've prepared ourselves the very best that we can. And we're just going to go up there and put together the very best one we can and see what happens.
And in the medal run, is it 4 runs?
4 runs total.
So that was number 3.
That was number 3.
So you're out. So now it comes down to the fourth
run,
and final run.
And honestly, we were just like, we're just going to go back up there and just, go out in a blaze of glory and put together the best run and see what happens. And, we always talk about mindset, right? And what's your mindset like? And we just chose to have the very best mindset, even in the face of that adversity. And so we went up there and just executed and did what we did best. And we were rewarded with an Olympic silver medal.
And you got beat by
Germany.
And I'm just curious because what was the difference? It was less than a second, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I always like to explain this to everyone.
Yeah.
So
to us lay people, please.
we lost the gold medal by 0.15 of a second.
Yeah. So when I talked about it comes down to so 15
over 4 runs.
Because it's combined, right?
Yeah, it's combined. So when you take a 4-man bobsled that's going nearly 90 miles per hour over a 1-mile track, 0.15 of a second is a comparison of a 1.5 difference.
Over those 4 runs.
Over the 4 runs.
It literally,
Not
they
only
beat
that,
you by a nose. That was the difference. From gold to silver.
And from silver to bronze was 6 inches. And the guys who were out of medal contention were literally you could have put the top 10 teams within a 2.5 foot.
Isn't that amazing?
Difference.
And isn't that really analogous of life?
Oh, absolutely.
That
right.
So there's this old metaphor that a horse that runs in a horse race and wins 10 times the prize money can win by a nose.
Yeah.
A nose, right? And wins 10 times the prize money.
Yeah.
It's not 10 times faster.
No.
It's not 5 times faster. Nope. It's a nose.
Yeah.
We're literally talking, they beat you by a nose.
Yeah. Yep.
That is just amazing.
Yeah. And it's, I always let people anybody in the top 10 could have won that gold medal that day. It just happened to be Germany's day for the gold, USA's day for the silver, and USA 2's opportunity for bronze.
USA was third.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So pretty crazy and intense.
Okay, so take us there. I still remember the medals stadium was across the street from the Triad Center, right?
Yeah.
In that parking lot.
Yep.
And the backdrop is all those big murals on all the buildings downtown. I mean, it was the most picturesque scene, wasn't it?
Yeah. Somebody asked me if I wanted so I was on one of the murals, the bobsled one. I was the guy that was on the back of the 4-man. You couldn't really see me. You could see my arm, but
you were over on the key bank or wherever it was, right?
Somebody's like, "Hey, do you want that after the Olympics? Do you want the mural?" I'm like, where am I going to put a mural that
it looked like it was this big, right?
It was like,
but it was 30, 40 feet high.
But kind of funny. So, so that day, during the medals award ceremony, again, very similar to the opening ceremonies, it's really hard to put into words because now you've kind of condensed it, right? Now your family is right there and you see the signs and then reality really starts sitting in. Not only did you make the Olympics, but you went to the Olympics and you won an Olympic medal. And I'll be honest, it's 20 years later and it still has not settled in. I go home and I look at my Olympic medal and I'm like, is that really mine?
And is there a feeling though? I mean, if you're downtown and you're driving along 3rd West right there in that area, I bet it still just has a feeling for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the coolest feelings too, and somebody asked me this not long ago, but I was doing an interview and they said, "Hey, how far from when you were awarded your Olympic medal did you actually eat out of garbage cans and were homeless?" And I was like,
goodness.
A block away. And that really hit home for me, the reality of what I had accomplished.
Literally a block away.
Literally a block away.
From where you got the silver medal hung around your neck.
Yep.
And a few years previously, you'd eaten out of
garbage cans and slept on the streets out there. Craziness.
That's an amazing story.
So then you add on just walking out, and not only having one USA team but 2 US teams representing on a podium that is normally dominated by European teams, and And I just remember walking out and I see, my family, my brother, my sisters, my grandma, my aunts and uncles, and my grandma speaks Spanish because we're Spanish. And she holds up a sign that says, Hito, I told you dreams come true, which is my son, I told you dreams come true. And the tears of joy start pouring down. You're just like, wow. I made it. And not only did I made it, I had an opportunity to represent my family at the same time and do it at home, and then just getting up there and just like having that guy put that medal around your neck. And you're just like, it's just a dream almost. It's literally a dream, the coolest dream you could ever have.
Contrast and compare that feeling in that moment right then
Mm-hmm.
to when you crashed through the bar 3 times and it was over going to Sydney.
Oh, completely different. Yeah.
Here was hopeless.
Yeah.
Right? You were hopeless.
Yeah.
Just a couple years before that.
Yeah.
And then here you were.
Second best in the world, and had solidified my name in sports history forever. And it's still there today.
Yeah, that can never be taken.
Yeah. So
then you went to the 2006 and 2010 Olympics.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah. That was my college coach's fault. He always used to tell me, anytime we did anything in practice and we did it well, he'd always tell me any fool could do it once.
Now stop, right? So you should have just stopped, not tried to do it again.
So I was like, he's like, I was just like, okay, any fool could go to the Olympics once, so I'm going to do it again and do it 3 times. And I wanted to make sure that when I left sport that I left on my own, and didn't want to look back and say I shoulda, coulda, woulda. And, I finished when I knew it. I mean, because I originally retired after the 2006 Olympics and came back because I was like, no, I can do
and
one
6
more.
and 10 were where? Remind me.
So 2006 was Torino, Italy, and 2010 was Vancouver, Canada.
Gotcha.
So I came back to do the third one and stepped away when I was really, really ready and done.
So you hung it up in 2010, but you didn't just push your way into a life of bliss.
No.
Life got difficult again.
It got really difficult.
How so?
And that's, earlier you mentioned there's a lot of the story that people don't know. And this is the story. I mean, people know my story worldwide of growing up homeless and drug addicted parents and all that stuff and eventually going to the Olympics. But a lot of people don't know the history and the story post Olympics. And
Well, as Paul Harvey would say, and now the rest of the story.
now the rest of the story.
Because that was just a chapter.
Yeah.
And just because you achieve success in something in your life doesn't mean that now life is just a series of other successes.
Yeah.
You can fall down.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
You can be dealt a bad hand.
Yeah. I fell down pretty hard. It's the part of the issue is that I was used to the life of being an athlete, traveling the world, being on the very top of the world, doing events, competing on world stages and just being an Olympic athlete. Right. And when I retired, that all just came to a crashing halt. And I was very unprepared for that. And that's one of the things I want people to really understand is it wasn't because it was someone else's fault. It was because I didn't prepare for what was next. And so by that, I then started to create an architecture. I always talk about this, that I started building a life by default and not by design. And so for me, I lost my identity of who I was. And I really struggled with that. And through that started, experiencing a lot of depression, that just continued to get worse. And because I was an athlete at the highest level, I always thought that I could fix all my problems on my own. And this is something typically that a lot of people do, is they don't reach out and ask for help. And I was that person who didn't ask for help. So of course things continued to get worse, and I continued to build a life by default that, included, like I said, depression, started getting involved with drinking a lot, antidepressant medication, pain pills, all at the same time, which led to, issues with my relationships with my kids as parents, with my friends, with my families. I then started isolating myself, bouncing from job to job, not being able to solidify a job, bouncing from relationship to relationship, not being able to maintain and secure a healthy relationship as well. And that went on for 8.5 years. And when, I probably don't do a good job of saying how bad it was, but it was pretty bad.
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really shitty?
I was
How bad?
I was almost homeless several times. And throughout those 8.5 years, a lot of suicidal thoughts on a regular basis, and really a lot of that fueled that fires that I fell into that victim mentality of, why is this happening to me? Why isn't, blaming God and blaming everyone else? I went to the Olympics. Why isn't this all working out? Why is that next opportunity not showing up for me? And so it was bad. It was always bouncing between an 8 and a 10 on a regular basis. And I tried to do everything I could to cover it up because I didn't want the general public to know that I was struggling. And did I hide it? I don't know. We think that we do as human beings, that we hide it from everyone else. And in some cases, maybe I did. In some cases, maybe nobody wanted to say anything about, what was going on. But I mean, I was drinking like a fish and partying and just doing a lot of stupid things and thinking that I was leading a normal life. And I was leading an absolute life of chaos that I had created for myself. So 8.5 years of that, I'll jump forward, that it eventually had pinnacled, and it had gotten so bad that, because I held it in, because I didn't ask for help, because I thought I could figure it out on my own, it eventually exploded. And in December 3rd of 2016, I attempted to take my life. And, it is what it is. I remember that whole night as clear as day. And I remember all the people that were trying to save me, and I didn't want them to save me. And I was fighting them off, and I was just like, I'm ready, I'm done, and let me go. And, it happened to do the attempt in front of my girlfriend at the time. And, an unfortunate thing. And, hopefully someday she can forgive me for that. But, long story short, I obviously survived, the suicide attempt, and the depression and issues still went on for another 2 years after that. So 2016, 2017, 2018. And I was living in Ogden at the time by myself. Typical person who isolated himself. I had 2 cats and a dog, and that was kind of like my sanctuary. And I worked and that's all I did. And at night, I had made my dinner, hang out with my pets, and drink more and sit up on the computer and just do more work, and eventually pass out, wake up in the morning and do it all over again.
Lather into your feet. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And through a mutual friend, I had somebody introduce me to a gentleman that we were working on a business deal. And outside of the business deal, he's like, hey, I'm getting ready to do this mentoring program. If you're interested in joining, it'd be, I'm looking for somebody who's in the athletic world who might be able to help out. And I was like, sure, why not? Nothing else going on. And the first conversation that we had in the mentoring group was, do you lead a life by default, or do you lead a life by design? And it didn't even take anything for me to really click with that. I was like, wow, I lead a life completely by default right now, because nothing is working out the way I wanted it to. More importantly, I haven't done the things I needed to make those things work out. And the rest of that conversation is, well, if you lead a life by default, it's not too late to declutter what you've built, start all over, and rebuild your architecture by design the way you want it to. And I was just like, holy crap, there's a chance for me to get out of this situation that I've built. Because I was, the typical person who deals with depression. I felt like I was the only one dealing with it. I was isolated. I was in this own dark space. I always had these dark thoughts, and, no one's going to, why is no one going to save me? And I just looked at it as an opportunity, like, wow, I have another chance to, overcome what's going on in my life and do a redo. And from there, we started talking about go have, if you lead a life by default, again, it's not too late to declutter it and rebuild. But to have this really settle in, go have a conversation with yourself in the mirror. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, when we get off this Zoom call, go have a conversation with yourself in the mirror. And I was like, well, that sounds stupid. and I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And I remember getting off the Zoom call, and I went straight from my dining room where I set up my office, and went into in the bathroom. And I just remember looking at myself in the mirror, just staring at myself, and with not knowing what to expect, with, probably after literally staring at myself for like 5 minutes in the mirror, all of a sudden this other person appeared in the mirror. It was still me, but for the first time in my life, I saw me as a different person.
How were you different?
Who
Who was that person that you saw differently?
It was that person was, I guess I don't even know how to explain it. That person was like the real me. And it was my opportunity to have a conversation with myself, because all this time I've been feeding myself a whole bunch of BS, right? And I always talk, and you probably hear it all the time, like, we're never going to, we're never going to advance, or we're never going to take steps forward until we stop believing our own BS. And so this is my opportunity to have a real conversation with myself, because it is what it is. We have a lot of people around us that want to give us advice and help us out. And at the end of the day, it's still up to us to take that advice. But when you have an opportunity to have a conversation with yourself, that's as real as it's going to get.
And so in that moment, is that when you called bullshit?
I called my bullshit. And the conversation in that show was basically like this, I asked myself, are you tired? Are you tired of this bullshit? And it was, the mirror, basically my reflection, asking me, are you tired of the bullshit? And I was like, yeah. And it was like, mirror, my reflection's like, are you tired of feeding your own bullshit to yourself? And I was like, yeah, I'm tired of it. And basically the conversation, the most epic part of the conversation is like, well, no one's going to come save you. I was like, what? No one's going to come save you. God's not going to come save you. Your neighbors are not going to save you. Your coaches are not going to save you. The only way you're going to ever get out of this is you're going to get out of this yourself. And you have to start taking those steps to do so. And I'm in tears having this conversation with myself, because it is the most real conversation I've ever had in my entire life. And I just remember, like, after that, I was like, okay, I just need to start decluttering all the negative stuff out of my life. And, interesting enough, I see on Facebook right now, people like, what's your New Year's resolution? And it's like, to separate myself from toxic people. Well, then why are you even connected with these toxic people in your life? If they don't serve you, then, get rid of them. And so I started just like decluttering everything in my life that wasn't serving me for what I wanted to do. And I had to go back, like, what was your original goal, what you wanted to accomplish in life? Because it wasn't this. I don't think anybody sits there and says, hey, I want to be depressed, alcoholic, drug addict that just committed suicide and doesn't want to have any hope for life. Like, nobody tells themselves that's their overall goal, right?
But that's what had happened by default.
That's what had happened by default.
Conversation in the mirror, you said, now it's time to design something different.
It's time to design something very different.
Tell us about that design and execution.
It just went back to, like, my goal, post Olympics, was to be able to continue to take my story and share that with the world, and help spread that word that, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can accomplish anything you want. And, I became a victim of my own BS, through that time and being a victim of all my own crap in life, and allowing negative influences in my life to pull me down, and just accepting that was okay in my life, and when I had that conversation with myself, I was like, this is not what you wanted to do. This is nowhere near what you wanted to accomplish in life. And I knew that from the time that I decided I wanted to be an Olympic athlete and I wanted to do something different and change my stars, I just went back to that and said, okay, then let's start laying out a game plan of what do you really want to accomplish. And I knew from that point on that my story and my experiences are not only good to serve me, but also good to serve other people that are dealing with some type of adversity in their life. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be in the same field. I mean, all the rules apply. And throughout those years, I'd learned so many lessons that if I didn't put them to good use, that then I just wasted all that time. And so I realized that I wanted to be a mentor and I wanted to be a coach and help other people out, whether it's individuals or organizations and teams. And so I literally said, one of the next conversations we started talking about is like, okay, you need to focus on your 5 pillars, because I'm the type of person, I get scatterbrained all over the place, and I'll take on all these different opportunities, and I'll be working on something that doesn't serve me whatsoever and getting distracted. Squirrel. And so through understanding what my 5 pillars were, I also had to learn how to say no. And that was really hard too, is to say no to opportunities.
Are you a pleaser?
I'm a pleaser. Yeah. And it is what it is. I had all these opportunities that were coming across my desk, and I was always trying to take them all on. And I eventually just had to say no.
It's hard to be a no if you're a pleaser.
It is hard to say no. But when I learned that I could start all over, I could build my life by design, I could declutter all the chaos that I'd built, learn to say no, and really focus on my 5 pillars, like things just started like taking off left and right. But I did mine to extreme. I literally sold everything in my place. I had a company that I was running. I shut it down. Dan Clark, you and I both know Dan. And by the way, he's at home. I don't know if you saw
I
that.
saw that yesterday.
He always, reminded me that you become the sum of the 7 people you spend the most time with. And so with that, I decided to move back to Sandy and surround myself with some of the best people, best coaches, best mentors I could find. And from there on out, I just continued to grow and grow and grow. And it doesn't, not to say that there's not hurdles along the way, but because I've set my foundation, I know what I want, and I know where I want to go, and I know what I want to do. And so it's easier to deal with hurdles in life now that I have like real focus. Again, I build my architecture by design. I know what I like to do. And, my main thing that works for me, like my foundation, is to come from a place of service, and people pleaser, like you said. But I know that when I come from a place of service, that the universe will just return that favor in any way, shape, or form it sees fit. But when I have an opportunity to serve and give and help other people out, I know I'm satisfying like my overall goal and my biggest pillar in life.
So is that a pillar, or that's the foundation? So the foundation is service, right? What are your 5 pillars? So
my pillars, mostly mentoring, coaching. I have my nonprofit as well. So even though, funny enough, my foundation is service, my pillars also are forms of service as well. So, speaking, obviously that's got a little bit on hold. But sharing my story.
That just means you have to do it differently.
Yeah, you just do it differently. So we do it virtually nowadays. So speaking, my nonprofit, working with others who are dealing with adversity, whether it's individuals or organizations. And then as of recently, like we talked about, spreading that message about dealing with depression, suicide, and addiction on a level. And that in itself, when I try to get, that was something I was never really prepared to actually do until somebody asked me if I would tell that story of dealing with depression and suicide and addiction.
Tell us about that experience the first time you shared that publicly.
Oh man, that was the scariest moment of my life. Because I didn't want everyone else to know that I was depressed and I was suicidal and I had an addiction problem. And so when I was asked to do that, it was at a private event here in Salt Lake City for a fundraiser. And originally when they asked me, I was like, no, I'm not ready to talk about that.
Because you're this big, tough Olympian.
Yeah. So I originally said no, was still going to go to the event just to participate in the event. And I went home and I'm very spiritual and I prayed about it. And the next morning I woke up with this overwhelming feeling that like, you have to go tell your story. And it was more of like, as many people as you've helped worldwide with your story of growing up homeless and going to the Olympics, you can help that many more people talking about your experience of depression, suicide, and addiction. And the way I put it, right, is like, how many Olympic athletes do you know that grew up homeless, went to the Olympics?
I know one.
Okay. But now, and this goes for anyone,
that's you. So right? I know one.
But how many people do you know who've dealt with depression, suicide, and addiction? Handfuls.
All too many.
And so realizing how impactful my story could be when it comes to suicide, depression, and addiction, I just felt overly like committed that I had to do this and I had to go tell my story. And when, I'm at this event in a private home, and, as a speaker for 20 years, right, you normally prepare something and you're ready. And I was just given this energy, like, don't prepare anything. You just get up there and talk from your heart 100%. And I get up there, and first time ever, I'm literally crying through a presentation, if you will, or just telling my story, and just, I'm struggling the whole time. And I get done and I was just like, oh man, I don't know what did I just do? Like, that was just the worst, speaking I've ever done. And I took a time out and I walked outside and back of the house and literally felt like I just did the wrong thing. And, standing outside trying to gather myself in tears, and one person after another comes outside and they're like, hey, we just wanted to thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable. And because I have a story just like yours, but I never thought it would be okay to share it. But if you, Bill Schuffenhauer, can share your story of depression, suicide, and addiction, then I feel like it's okay to tell mine. And a light just went off. And I was like, whoa, maybe I have something here. And after that event, I just realized that anytime I have an opportunity to share my story and be vulnerable in my story, and be real, that, I have to get out there and share as much as I can. And from there, I've had people that I don't even know call me up out of the blue and say, hey, I'm really struggling right now. Do you just have a minute? And, it's just been an amazing blessing for me to be able to share that and help other people with that stuff. So.
Well, pre-pandemic, life was hard enough.
It was.
And then we were dealt this wild card.
Yeah, absolutely.
For 2020, because none of us knew what that would look like, right? Yeah. 15 days to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
So we all hunker down for 15 days, and it's been over 150 days.
Yeah.
We're going on almost a year now.
Yeah.
Since we first got that news. So you add that wild card on top of it, and there are a lot of people who are hopeless.
Yeah.
Alone, feel unloved. What would you say to them today?
Yeah. First and foremost, I want you guys to know that you are absolutely not alone. And again, being vulnerable, and I will get teary-eyed because I'm going to be as transparent as possible. But through the first part of the pandemic, things were going really, really well for me. And then I got news that one of my very best friends and my Olympic teammates committed suicide. That was a huge blow for me. Then lost a person I thought I was going to get married to, not to death, but just the relationship went south out of the blue. Lost all my clients, went south because of the pandemic. So financially things started being a huge struggle, and just really struggled for a long time with the relationship part, and again, financially things just really started falling apart. But you guys aren't alone. We're all dealing with it. Even as of recently, I haven't even told you about this.
Get back over here.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm driving you out that door. The producers are doing great just to let you go, but I'm thinking I'm
but we're all dealing with a lot of hard things. I didn't talk to you about this, but I, again, being very transparent, we're all dealing with a lot of hard stuff. I just lost my mom the day after Christmas. And I just want you guys to know out there that we're all dealing with a lot of hard stuff, but we have a beautiful tribe of people around us, right? And it's every day, for all of us, it's a struggle. The whole depression and stuff is a struggle, but I know I'm on the right path, and I have a lot of stuff to share with everyone else. And
I'm sorry, I did not know about your mom.
That's okay.
I didn't know about your mom.
It's okay.
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't there for you. I didn't know that.
That's right. I didn't televise it all.
Well, I know. Wow. That's.
I just again, I want everyone out there who may be listening or know somebody who might be struggling, that it's okay to feel the feelings you're feeling. But one of the most rewarding things for me is when I realized that I could actually step out and talk about how I was feeling. Doesn't matter that I was this 6 foot, 260 pound Olympic athlete. It was so much more, I guess, rewarding that knowing that I could, I know that I could call you, I could call John at any point in time and say, hey, I'm really struggling. And just to have somebody to talk about whatever's going on has changed my life for the good. Because when I was in that deep, dark place, I didn't want to talk about it. And I think that's part of the key. It's not like we're not talking about suicide and depression and addiction, because we're all talking about it. The key is like, how do we get the person who's in that place to talk about it?
Yeah, because I didn't want to talk about it
right?
either.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've talked about this too.
Yeah.
It was like,
You don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it. And so I want people to understand that the more we can realize that we don't have to be alone in that dark space, the more we can actually come out of that and shine and glow and share your story with whatever it is you're dealing with. Because there's, again, I go back to that moment where I didn't want to tell my story at first, but when I realized that next morning I woke up, that how many other people out there around the world are dealing with depression, suicide, and addiction. And if my story could help them, your story can help thousands of other people too. And so, whatever it is that you're going through right now, you're not alone. I promise you that you are not alone. And it may seem like it, but again, I've had people call me up out of the blue and said, hey, do you have a minute to talk? I don't even know who they are. And absolutely. Yeah. What can I do to help you out?
And it's just being there is the answer, right? What can I do? It's just being there.
Yep.
And I think it's important. Sometimes we feel like, well, I'm not trained to help someone through suicide, addiction, depression. You know what? You don't need all the training. If you can get some, great. But don't you think that 99% of it is just showing up?
Just showing up. Yeah. And nothing against anyone that knew that I was dealing with the depression and suicide. But interesting enough, because I just started doing a bunch of research on this stuff. Interesting enough, I had so many people tell me, they're like, well, you were the Olympian. We thought you just overcome it. Like you're strong Olympian.
Yeah. Just man up.
You're just man up. Right. And, but I couldn't, and so I say that because, again, I know there's a lot of people out there that know somebody who's dealing with this, and don't be concerned with hurting somebody's feelings. Just go and ask them, hey, just be there. You don't even have to be a friend. As human beings, we are meant to serve one another. And that's all. Sometimes that's all it takes, is to have some person, whether you know them or not, just understand for a moment what they're dealing with, or just listen. That could change somebody's life or save somebody's life.
And if you ever get that prompting, or that impression, whether you know that person or not, but the Spirit acts on you to take action to help another person, do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
My challenge for all of us in 2021 is shorten the length of time from the time you get an impression or a prompting or whatever you want to call it to the time you take action. Because what we do is we stop and we say, oh, that's not logical, or I don't know that person, or how will this look, or whatever. And we miss so many opportunities to bless each other's lives.
Yeah.
But if we're sensitive to those promptings, amazing things will come into our lives. And many times those are the things that we need in our life to get through the funk we're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Right. And, it is what it is. It's 2020. We've got this pandemic. And for one of the probably first times ever, globally, we're almost all in the same boat together right now with this pandemic. Right. And at the same time, globally, we can help one another because we're all in the same boat. And so, as opposed to, fighting each other and taking that initial step to go out and help your neighbor, whoever it is, just go do it. I would say the majority of people I've had an opportunity to talk to, and hopefully I've helped, are people I didn't even know, and that's what it's all about.
Give us a couple of nuggets or tidbits that we can use moving into 2021 to design a life on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally just do what I do. You know, first and foremost, take a look at your own life and stop worrying about everyone else's life. Focus on your own life, and you know, and ask yourself, do you lead a life by design or life by default? And what does that mean? And what that means is, do you currently have the life that you want 100%? If you were to write it down on paper, would it be exactly what you wanted? And if it isn't, then figure out like different steps to declutter those things out of your life because they don't serve you, and then build that by design. And it's hard to say exactly what, because so many people want different things,
Sure.
but you can build your life by design. And I'm a huge advocate. I think as an athlete, I might be more straightforward, but you have to stop believing some of the old BS that you keep feeding yourself day in and day out, you know, and have a game plan. You know, life is the biggest Olympics for everyone. And if you don't have a game plan and an execution and mentors and coaches surround you, how do you ever expect to be successful in what you're going to do?
It's a lie.
Yeah.
We keep telling ourselves. We got to be honest with ourselves. Stop
Right.
lying. Stop shoveling our own shit like we're talking about here.
Right.
And this is a podcast, so we can use that word.
Right.
And I had a boss when I lived in Chicago, and he used to use that word in coaching a lot of times, and he would just had no problem calling people's bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it has to start. We have to call our own bullshit,
Yeah.
and just say, you know what I mean? Especially one of my favorite little scenes is the end of 10 Days to Lose a Guy.
Yeah.
You know, Matthew McConaughey and
Yeah.
and they play that game bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do that for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Stop lying.
Yeah. I always tell people too, you know, if life is one of the most difficult things to be successful at, but it's also one of the easiest things to be successful at as well.
How so?
And, you know, because if, you know, for example, if you're going to go out there, let's say one day you want to go out and build a rocket. Are you just going to go out and start building a rocket, or are you going to find people who've built a rocket before you and get the help you need? One of the craziest things I've done, you know, I mentioned to you before that I've just not done well at relationships, not good at all. And so recently I got into a new relationship, and I asked my partner, I said, hey, historically I've done really, really bad at relationships. And I've realized that, you know, when I've been successful, I've had coaches and mentors in my life. I said, so I had a thought. Although we're starting off a relationship, would you be interested in getting marriage and couples counseling? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. And so as opposed to waiting until something's broken, we're learning the tools to
So you don't break it.
So we don't break it, right?
Because otherwise we just follow the same pattern,
Yeah,
right?
you
It was a pattern that put you in those situations.
Yeah.
And we think, oh, if I just get to a new person,
Right.
then everything will be fixed.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I was still the variable that was broken.
Yeah. Yep.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And one of the things I study Jack Canfield as well as a mentor, study a lot of different guys. And years ago, I was listening to Jack, and he said, hey, what if you took 100% accountability for everything that happens in your life? And I was like, no. I was like, are you
'Cause you're always like,
crazy?
there's that
one thing,
right?
right? And I encourage people out there to be super vulnerable when they start thinking about this, and be very, very wide open. But what if you could be 100% accountable for everything that happened in your life? How would you address it, and how would you change it?
Well, not only what if I did,
Mm-hmm.
what if I don't?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, unless we are 100% responsible,
Mm-hmm.
we can never design our lives.
Yeah. And it's been interesting too, because I, you know, going to the counseling with my girlfriend, who's absolutely amazing. It's funny, we were joking around the other day, and I was like, wow, kind of feels like our counseling focuses a lot on me. And she's like, are you okay? I was like, no, it's totally fine. Like historically, I had a lot of more things that go wrong in my life, and I'm glad that we're able to address them in a healthy way.
Yeah, because you knew that you would just lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
And then she would be an ex again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to lose
Yeah.
her.
No, I don't. She's awesome. But by taking these steps that are outside of the box normally, right? And it's funny because I've told other people, I'm like, oh yeah, I go to couples and marriage counseling. They're like, how long have you guys been together? I'm like, 3 months. And they're like, are you guys okay? I'm like, no, we're great.
You're being proactive.
We're proactive as opposed to like waiting until something's broken.
That's powerful.
So
that's a powerful lesson for all of us in all the things we're doing.
yeah,
because we generally think, well, I'll fix it when it's broken.
right.
Well, how about we just stop doing the things that get us where we're at and then fix them again proactively moving forward? So that's powerful.
Yeah. So
tell us about how you serve people and organizations. Let's put your website on the screen, olympianspeaks.com, olympianspeaks.com. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
yeah, so realizing that historically I've overcome a lot of stuff in life and learned a lot of principles along the way that help address a lot of those things. I also learned that those things are universal, and things that help me be successful as an Olympic athlete can also apply to things that help a sales team be more productive. Or funny enough, I didn't plan on getting into working in relationships, but I've worked with a couple of clients in their relationships and helping them understand what they can do. So I'm fortunate enough to work with individuals, whether it's their personal life, their physical fitness life, all the way to their work life and organizations and sales teams and executives, and depending on what they're dealing with, depends on how we're going to address it. So I don't deliver a here's the answer to all in one box.
It's not a one size fits all box, is it?
It's really dependent on the client and their needs and what they want to accomplish. So we tailor it to whatever it is they need and go from there.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm glad that you found some time to share with us today. Even, on the heels of, I reached out to you a couple days ago, so you were going through some stuff.
Yeah, I was going through
some
stuff.
And and I didn't know that. So again,
one of the things I realized a long time ago is that, if you choose to come from a place of service, that, the train doesn't stop. And I know my mom has known, through her life what I do and what I transition my life into based off of how I grew up. And I know, now that she's on the other side and she's in a better place, she wouldn't she wouldn't have any expectations of me stopping. And she knows I love doing what I do, and I love service, and I love to help other people. And so the train must go on. The
train must go on. But thank you for accepting this invitation to be vulnerable on the podcast and share with us. What's your email for those that would like to reach out?
Just my website, olympianspeaks@gmail.com. So pretty easy. And it's on there. It's an easy way to find me as well. It's just on olympianspeaks.com.
Very good.
So
Bill's a great man. He has a lot to share, and I'm just grateful that he came in today and was vulnerable and shared his story with us. And he and I are similar in our mission to just let you know that you are not alone. You are loved, and there is hope. So whatever you're going through, if you're going through a tough time, don't be so proud, because I think that's what it is. It's pride.
Yeah.
I think that's why we don't reach out. Don't be so proud that you can't reach out to someone and let them know that you need help. Now, the other side of that coin is I don't always want these types of messages on the podcast to seem, doom and gloom. There's a bright side to this.
Absolutely.
There's the upside of this. And we go through cycles of, shitty times and glory days and we all go through those cycles. So right now, I also hope that as you're looking into 2021, that you have an eye on hope and accomplishing great things, despite what's going on in the world. There were a lot of people during the pandemic who just hid. I also know a lot of people who said, okay, how do I reinvent myself? How do I retool my own skills and abilities? And how do I refocus my talents? And they've made great things happen, because more millionaires are actually created in downtimes than uptimes.
Yeah.
And we don't think about that. So this is an opportunity to start anew. And your dreams and your goals are just as valid today as they have ever been. It's just a different world. There might be a few new rules, but we're not victims unless you choose to be a victim. So rise up, take 100% responsibility. If it's to be, it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to you. Not 99% responsibility. Not that one time in my life. No, 100% responsibility. For all the stupid, brainless, wicked, dumb things you've done in the past, they're in the past. The reason your rear view mirror in your car is little and it's just right here is so that you can just check the mirror to make sure, that everything's okay behind you. But you don't drive the car looking in the rear view mirror. You look out that big windshield. And as you look into your future now, I hope you'll see that the future is bright and the great things are just over the horizon if you believe in yourself and you stay the course. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on what you believe your mission in life is, because I know that each one of us are here for a distinct and definite purpose to make a difference. The world needs you like never before. Any parting thoughts?
I do. We always talk about dreams, right? And I have this quote that I came up with a long time ago, that dreams are only dreams until we take the actions to ignite them.
Ooh, ignite.
Yep.
Well, let this be the year, 2021, be the year that you ignite who you were meant to be. And I'd like to close the way we close my podcast. It is this: keep shining brightly, because someone out there needs to be guided by your light. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Have a great